Start. Wonderful, and welcome to another ACCELN Hangout. It's our first for 2016. Hi, Amanda.
Hello.
It's a place we can share our learning and teaching adventures and dream about the future of professional learning adventures.
And as usual, if you're watching us live, you can post a question to our panel. Okay, there's a selection here. So you can use the Q&A in YouTube, or you can use our Today's Meet chat room, todaysmeet.com/ACCELN. And on Twitter tonight, you have two hashtags you can use. That's ACCE 2016 or ACCELN. They're your hashtags for our conversation.
Go on, give the ACCE 2016 hashtag a try. I'm Roland Guesthausen, teacher from Victoria, Australia, and I enjoy wearing wooden clogs.
As you do. He's got a Dutch background. I'm Amanda Rablin. I'm a teacher and e-learning coordinator from Brisbane and proud QSite member and past board member. And I enjoy making things with and without electronics. Sometimes we have show and tell at our Hangouts. This is one I'm very slowly preparing. No tech, well, except for YouTube that taught me how to do it. So I'm making a quilt for my sister's new baby, and he's lovely, but she doesn't know yet, so I hope she's not watching this broadcast.
Is that wearable technology? Like it's got, I imagine, some built-in LEDs or...
Oh, well, I wanted to, but coin cell battery is not really good for babies, so maybe I'll make him a jacket when he turns 5 or something.
Yeah. Wearable currency, it would be some coins tied in the corner of a hanky. I've got here a bit of electronics that we've made. This is a Morse code signal generator, bit of fun. And it's interesting when you start to get electronics up and running. We've got at the end of this school term, Amanda, a light festival in Belgrade. Because the lights get quite dark here in the depths of, you know, we have like 6 months of sun and then 6 months of darkness, and right there at the darkest depths of Melbourne winter, we're going to have a lantern parade just around the corner. And so the kids in my class are making hats with various flashing lights and looking at a larger construction that we can march and carry around.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah, but you've got lots of sunshine states here tonight, haven't we, from Queensland?
Yes, we've got quite a few Queenslanders and Q-siders and even a New South Welshman who, that's okay, we'll accept you for now until Strait of Origin. So how about we just get started by meeting all of our lovely guests this evening. And just because you're first on my screen, well, the first one that isn't Roland, Fiona, you're up first, so let us know who you are and a little bit about you and your involvement with ACCE 2016.
Hello, I'm Fiona Badger. Hi again. I'm a technologies teacher at a state school in Queensland. I've been involved with QSite for a number of years now, and this year we're very excited to be on the committee for preparing for the ACCE conference in September. Thanks.
Fabulous. And Kylie, who's just joined us, but I don't think you got your camera on this evening, so you can just use your audio if you'd prefer. Do you want to give us an intro? Oh, you are there. Hello.
Hello, Amanda. I'm on the ACCE committee as well, and I'm just doing general things towards the conference, and yeah, nothing really important. So.
Oh, Kylie, don't say that.
Oh, not at all. She has actually helped us to organise ourselves to get these Hangouts back again. So
that's right, just organising stuff, general stuff, and following things up, finding presenters, and finding bands for the entertainment, and schools to perform, things like that. So, yeah, just organising stuff.
And Martin, now who are you? Have I heard of you before? Oh, that's right, you're famous. Yep.
Famous. I'm famous for having a really bad internet connection, so sorry if I drop in and out a wee bit.
This is true.
But I've come along because ACCE is this, and it's amazing to see what QSite is doing as it was with Adelaide. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they can pull off this year. Looking forward to visiting Brisbane and looking forward to the conference in general. So I'm just here as a sort of, hello, here I am. I'm interested in listening to you and I toast you. Cheers.
Oh, thank you. That just beats my cup of tea, hands down there. Fabulous. And we also have Peter with us. Do you want to give us an introduction of yourself, kind sir?
Yeah, I'm Peter Albion from the University of Southern Queensland these days. Let me think. I was in QSite before it was QSite. That goes back a long, long way. I think I did drop out for a
At
little while.
least 5 years.
Was that New Holland or something? I'm trying to think.
That was when it was the Computer Education Group of Queensland, a very long time ago. But I've done various things over the years, edited the magazine Quick. But this time around, I'm looking after the presentations and submissions for the conference. So I'm working with the website for that and dealing with the refereed presentations and assisting with picking up at least the non-refereed contributions, which are being passed off to Karen Swift to work with.
Fabulous. So coordinating a lot, and you get to read all of the wonderful academic contributions as well.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, they can see all the interesting stuff that's coming in, and there is some interesting stuff there. So yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so as people have probably worked out, tonight we're here to help kick off ACCE 2016. It is 2016 now, so I think it's time we do this.
Hey, Brisbane, where did I put my sunglasses and wide brim hat?
Well, it's not exactly Melbourne there, Roland. You won't need a jacket and scarf in September. In fact, right now, it's also a time when there's lots and lots of sunshine here in Brisbane. Vegas. We don't have that lots of darkness that you had. So sunshine, possibly some lollipops, not sure yet.
Oh, well, I suppose if it rains in Melbourne, I could always go. I mean, you've got the footy, I guess, and grand final series. I think I could squeeze in the conference, October, isn't it? And the direct link for the conference site, if you're wondering, is acce2016.acce.edu.au. If you haven't checked it out yet, you definitely should. And IF stands for is fabulous.
I think there's something not just iffy about Roland, but about the whole conference this year and the themes involved. It's not your usual kind of categories and structures there. Now, Peter, because you've been organising the papers and the structures and the presentations there, what can you tell us about the theme and then how the papers and presentations have been organised for this event?
The theme. Some bright spark, and almost literally, I suppose, because of the way they've done the logo, came up with this notion that we should think about what would happen if we thought about things differently. So really, it's been an invitation for people to jump out of the box and think about something somewhat differently, and think, what if we had those sorts of things? And if could mean anything, of course. So we've popped out a few different varieties of non-refereed presentations and tried to wrap some if language around each of those. So we've encouraging people to think about in-focus papers and intriguing forums and so on. But essentially to do a little bit of dreaming and to think about what would happen if we didn't keep on doing things the same old way. What would it be like if we did something that was a little bit different? And time of uncertainty. I mean, what will happen if Donald Trump is elected, for argument's sake? or if Malcolm calls a double dissolution. So there's lots of things to speculate about in the world in general, but in the world of IT and schools, what is going to happen when somebody releases a new bit of gear, or we start to think differently about how we deal with the curriculum? So
I'm thinking I'm thinking at the conference event we need like this giant whiteboard or something where we just write continuous if then else statements just over and over again about these variety of IT related and non-related things. But I interrupted you mid-sentence, so please continue.
Well, now you've made me start thinking about, because I sort of wonder what would happen if the politicians who are saying we should teach coding to every kid in the school really understood what coding was, because I suspect they don't. But
it's good to hear you say that, because there are so many ways of actually speculating about the future, and I think that there's a real good role that schools can play in getting kids to help play a part in designing that, and for teachers to act as facilitators. That means asking some of the disruptive questions about if this is going to happen, if that's going to happen. I love the questioning. I also think it's really cool that you've just kind of moved away. We've gone from maybe 2 decades of trying to remash ICT and IT into the name of a conference, to make it very clear it was an IT conference. But by you raising it as a question, if perhaps also raise the potential of what we could do if we could answer some of these questions or engage in a dialogue.
Yeah, and I think that's really what we hope might happen, that people will come along and will be willing to ask questions and to have a crack at answering some of those questions and to bat the ideas backwards and forwards and see what different possibilities there might be.
Now, I'm thinking, being someone who's already facilitated a few panels digitally, maybe I need to set up something on this intriguing forum option. What kind of things would you suggest to people looking to run an intriguing forum?
I guess if you try and get a panel, what you might want is a variety of views. So you had 3, 4, 5 people who, well, might even disagree with each other. That'd be interesting. I recall you and I were on a panel once in Canberra, I think it was, and we did actually disagree with each other. I wasn't too fussed on postmodernism, but so I think that's fair enough. You can find people who perhaps do have a genuine disagreement, but can agree to differ and do it in a civil sort of fashion and have that discussion. Or you might find people who have different perspectives on a particular issue, different ways of approaching it, or come out of different school environments and look at the way that the same sort of issue is approached in different places. With kids of different ages or in schools with different backgrounds or different geographical locations. But I think the key to that sort of thing would be to have a variety of people who bring some different perspectives and then toss some ideas around.
So would you base it on a theme or a question or a topic? Like you could say, what if politicians had to code before making a media statement about it?
That would be interesting. And I think that's really, well, there are a whole range of issues around that sort of thing that give us cause to think, what is going to happen if we try to teach kids to code? And certainly there are some kids who should do it, and I think everybody should have some notion of that. But it's really the computational thinking that's underneath it that's probably more important. And that notion of the if-then statement that you were lining up there a moment ago really goes to the heart of that, is how do we express this stuff in a way that is plain enough in language that people can understand it, but gets at the heart of the way we need to think about things a bit differently.
Is it hard to just if it was turned into a talk fest with people just asking around, how do we actually do something in a way that gets people to come up with something more than just listening to a presentation or a lecture or a panel? What kind of ideas do you have for sort of stimulating that broader discussion?
I think sometimes it is a matter of stirring up the audience, and perhaps if there are people who are prepared to toss out something which is sufficiently provocative, then the audience will respond to that in some fashion. So that's certainly one option, is to try to engage the audience and to get them to take up that case in some fashion and to argue one side or the other, or to maybe try to get the audience to generate a range of ideas about how things might happen. So whether that's how well we'd work with that, I don't know, because we are mostly, I suppose, in that whole old schoolmasterly mode of standing at the front of the room and talking. And that, I still don't know, after all these years. I did my dip ed in 1973, and I remember the lecturer standing at the front of the room at UQ, and talking about the need to vary the stimulus when you were teaching. And she talked in a monotone for half an hour.
I have a very similar experience.
And I still don't know whether she was being deliberately ironic, and that was the point. I haven't forgotten it, so it was very effective.
It's kind of like a, don't do this. There's so many different teaching strategies you could use. I'm going to show you them in a lecture.
But I think sometimes it is that sort of provocation almost, and maybe what we do need are some provocations to thinking that get people to jump up a little and say, well, hang on a minute, there may be a different way of thinking about that.
One thing that's really interesting, at the last ACCE conference that was called ACEC 2014, Roland and I presented a refereed paper. I'm just saying this to sound, famous, but Peter presents refereed papers all the time, so we actually analysed the Twitter streams since 2008, 2010, and 2012 conferences, and one of the things we discovered was what Roland actually called the Gary Steger effect. And what was really interesting was when there was someone there just going with, this is the view, or taking a really controversial stance one way or the other, people would respond in the back channel in such a flurry. And I thought, that's really interesting, but what if it's a little bit more interactive? What if people were able to offer their counterpoints as well? And Gary's the kind of person that just, will take that and run with it and keep going as well, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, and that can be interesting. At the conference I was at in the States a few weeks ago, one of the first keynote speaker was Mark Prensky.
I remember him. He had 400 slides in one slideshow or something.
He whacked through a bunch of slides, and he talked about Plan B for education, which really was nothing very new. But yeah, it certainly stirred up the crowd. There are some people who like what Prensky has to say. There are some people who seriously don't like what he has to say. But there certainly weren't a lot of people in the audience who weren't reacting to it in some fashion or other. So I think, there is that role for provocation, that even if people don't agree with it, then they start to think about what are the alternatives and how might we approach this differently.
And certainly it goes beyond that provocative stimulus. Otherwise it's just feeling like you've listened to this particular side or another. So I think it certainly has to be extended into that more of a conversation and a structure, or an organic kind of situation as well.
Yeah, I think it's how you get that conversation to start, and then keep rolling and do something creative and constructive with it. But until people actually are challenged and got out of their comfort zone, then perhaps they won't start to think about doing it differently.
What about the beginner presenter, somebody who hasn't presented before? Because not everybody will feel comfortable with putting up a big issue to get the crowds roared up. So have you got any suggestions for a beginner?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting to go to conferences and you see stuff that's coming around again, and some of the things that are presented really aren't new for some people, but they are very new for others. And I think that's the thing to recognise, is that you get a crowd of people who are at different stages in the way they're working with technology or the way they're working with pedagogy in classrooms, and what really doesn't appear very new to some is actually quite new for other people, or there's a new spin on it and a new way of doing it. So I think all of those contributions have something worthwhile. For somebody who really genuinely is a little bit diffident about turning up and presenting, pick a friend. And I've certainly been part of that, I suppose, on either side of that equation, but certainly I can recall going to conferences with colleagues who were a bit nervous about doing that sort of thing and working with them. So find somebody that you can work with and do a joint presentation.
Amanda, I think that's fabulous. Yeah, yes, sure, Martin. Jump in.
I reckon that presenting is probably the best professional development that you can ever do. And I love Peter's idea of teaming up with someone else. There's always more strength in numbers. But what's always struck me is that teachers, for some bizarre reason, are very, very insecure and shy in the main. It's not everyone, of course. But the fact that they can talk about what they've done preceded, and I'm sure we've all heard this, by people saying, oh, no one would be interested in that, or what I've done is not very good, or other people are doing better than me. And surprisingly, those people are usually the people who are doing things that are really, really good. And what they get out of it at the other end is this amazing affirmation that they have got a lot of people who are thinking the same way as they are, which is often useful, and that people will come up and say, you're doing a good job. And it's not often at schools that you get that. You often get the negatives, but it's not often that you get the positives. So I'd like to encourage as many people as possible to get up there and talk about what they're doing. It doesn't matter how simplistic they may think it is. As Peter has suggested, there are a lot of people that anything will be new, and some people who've seen it all before. If we were to put the combined experience of everyone on this little team here into years.
System couldn't handle that number.
It was.
But there are a lot of people who haven't.
Yeah. And I'm thinking too, Martin, that the kind of person it sounds like that you want to bring to a conference like this is someone who is an original thinker. And it doesn't have to be a magician who's got all the tricks or all the latest gadgets or the newest apps, but someone who's an original thinker who can apply it in a way that might be different in the classroom, has a really honest experience to share. Can reflect.
I love the honest experience. I love the honest experience. That's really, really good. I mean, we've all been, and I have been recently, to a number of conferences where big names get up and basically just show you websites, and anyone can do that. Not terribly difficult, but the story of what's actually happening with real kids in real classrooms, and real successes and real failures, are things that will ring positive with an audience, I think, particularly an audience of peers, and that's something that I think we should encourage. I don't want the latest apps and the latest gizmos. I think that's all distracting. That's showmanship, and whilst that's important, if you really want to deal with a big audience, you've got to have some concept of showmanship. The message that you're sending is distorted, because that message is all talking about the circus. It's not talking about the learning, and I think that that's really important. You mentioned Gary Stager earlier on, and Stager and myself and a couple of others did a session at ICTE. Oh no, ISTE. I always get these things mixed up. ISTE. There you go. In Philadelphia last year, that said that ICT has failed education, and that was our premise. And there were some terrific people talking on that. Gary, Audrey Waters, David Thornburg, Will Richardson, all talking about why the failure has happened. And that was, I guess, because we talked about the changes that are necessary, and the fact that we're trying to bolt jet engines onto horse and carts, and the way we need to change things. And I think that was quite useful, but you don't need to be that provocative. You don't need to be that, well, provocative, I guess, is the best word, because a lot of things that are happening in classrooms are very, very worthwhile.
Well, I think the other thing too, Martin, is the particularities of every different classroom, that even if you've got the same idea that somebody may have implemented somewhere, your classroom, your kids, your circumstances are different, and it's going to play out at least a little bit differently. And it's interesting to hear those things, and for people in a variety of different circumstances to hear, yep, what happened when you tried that idea in that location, because it wasn't the same as someplace else. And maybe if I want to try it in mine, I've got to mix and match ideas from a couple of locations.
Fabulous.
Yeah,
And
I think
I love
that's
that
a really
diversity.
important lesson. That's really important. Yeah.
Now,
I think the cookie cutter approach is not going to work. I think that's really important, that everyone's classroom is different. That's another important message, I think.
definitely.
I think it's great. It's great when you go to ACCE and you see lots of fantastic presentations, and you see some really good new technology in all of the sponsorship exhibitions stands, and then you have a presentation from a teacher who's doing this in the classroom and saying, this was what works, this is how it worked in my classroom, here are some photos of kids engaging in these things, and it really puts everything in focus, which is one of the other conference category, presentation categories. So that's one of the things that helps to balance out all of the learning at the conference, is these great speakers and then the real life stories from classrooms. That's really something I really value about the conferences. They're the ones I like the best.
And the networking that happens as well, because the other great thing is when you present, is that an offshoot of that, like oftentimes, is that people will take your email address if you put that onto your slides and perhaps get in contact with you, and you get like a professional dialogue, like some kind of exchange occasionally as well, if you're interested.
Yeah, and one of the things I really like about professional association conferences is that sense of community and family that evolves over time as well. So all the people in this room here I have seen at several conferences now, and I feel totally comfortable sharing my classroom practice with you. Whereas the very first QSite conference I went to a few years back, not as many as Peter's, I was really nervous and uncertain about sharing, but I felt that it was a really welcoming kind of environment. And then from there, like 2 or 3 years later, I was asked, hey, you want to join the board? And I was like, oh, can I? That sounds exciting. And then you're stuck in this family for life. No, which is a wonderful thing. Another, just drawing back to the types of presentations you can do, for people who are feeling really uncertain about committing to a full-on presentation, there's also the instant fame short style presentation, which you have 5 minutes and a maximum of 20 slides, and after 5 minutes it's finished. You've shared your classroom idea, but then you can talk to people maybe with wine later about your ideas or a cup of coffee and extend it as a more comfortable kind of conversation as well. Yet the richness and diversity you get from those short presentations one after each other is really amazing. And I think at the DLTV conference last year, Roland, the Spark talks were really, really popular, and you had people that would just sit there and go, I'm going to take in all of these ideas, and then after you've shared at the end of a session, each person who had shared something had like 4 or 5 people come up to them and go, I'm really interested in this because of X, Y, Z, and how can I get that started in my classroom? So you do feel like a bit of a superstar sharing the ideas, and you've automatically got some of those connections, which is just wonderful.
It was lovely at the physics conference in February. They did something similar, Amanda. They picked up that, but rather than call it a lightning talk, they called it a karaoke, because you kind of handed the microphone on and kept the chorus going. And I thought that it has enormous potential for being able to rattle through ideas. Like you said, it's your chance for a few minutes of fame, and most teachers can hold their own for that, I reckon, for a couple of minutes. If you're passionate about something you're doing and you want to share it. But for something Martin was saying before about that authenticity, if you believe in what you've got to do, and I reckon we're good at that short pitch, then go for it. I've got a chance here, if anyone's interested, to showcase the website. I'll just switch the screen view around. I tried a bit earlier, but had to fix things up with the interwebs. So here we go. This is the conference website, and perhaps if Fiona or Kylie, could you give us a rundown?
I think we can do it. Should we do it as a joint effort, Kylie? We'll show them how to work it together.
Okay, so we're heading to Brisbane. What if schools are not encumbered by traditional norms and structures and technology, social capital, and pedagogies were used to their true realisation and potential? That's a good theme.
Yes. So if you scroll down the page a little, I think we have gone past the time for the refereed contributions, haven't we, Peter?
We have, although I did get a late one the other day, and well, we wouldn't necessarily ignore one if we had one offered to us.
Okie dokie.
He does like reading academic papers for fun, so a few more to add to the conference. I'm sure he won't mind.
That's right, yes.
So you've got Julie Lindsay, Dr. Michael Henderson. I heard Michael was up in Townsville last year at the QSite conference. That was fantastic, Amanda.
Yeah. We had a very creative opportunity. We had to make things with pipe cleaners, and we were challenged and supported, and it was really thought-provoking as well. And that same kind of theory or provocation, I guess, that Martin raised, who has now left the Hangout because he's got something else on. That's okay, we'll forgive him. The same thing of why hasn't just integrating ICT worked, and a whole bunch of academic papers and resources, including two by Peter in a book, to expand on his ideas as well. So
great.
Yeah,
I know
really
Julie's
powerful.
just recently authored another book, I believe, and I'm really keen to hear some of the ideas that she sees for the global classroom in the wide community. And we've also got Bruce Dixon and Brian Lewis, I notice.
Sorry, just jumping back to Julie Lindsay, I've heard her speak a couple of times now, and she's awe-inspiring. She'll be a wonderful person to hear, to listen to. And what she will be talking about is practical collaboration and global collaboration, which is what our students really enjoy, isn't it?
Yeah, looking forward to that. And of course, there's your lovely marketing corporate video, which will talk about the vibrant city lifestyle that Brisbane is. So a lot to surf and a lot to check out and a lot to register, and that's up on the website there, and you can even just, I've noticed, hit that by just Googling ACCE 2016.
Yeah. Also, just so you know, those blue lines underneath the tabs mean that there's a drop-down menu, so don't miss all of the information that's available there.
Thank you.
Now, I believe there is or are going to be some updates to our call for abstracts and speakers as well. So on that page is actually where you will find all of those intriguing if-based themes and structures for the different workshops as well. And Peter, I believe you guys have just come from, and of course Kylie and Fiona as well, I believe you guys have just come from a ACCE 2016 conference planning meeting, and you were discussing, hey, let's extend the deadlines for people to submit their ideas, which is good because we don't want to do this after it's closed and everyone gets really excited and then they can't submit. So can people still sign up to present a paper?
Oh yes, they certainly can, and I've actually put a note up on the website where they can submit to suggest that for the moment we'll extend it to about the 30th of April, but we'll see how we're going there. But I think it's one of those things where teachers being as they are, and as even those of us who've gotten out of the school classroom find, as educators, life is incredibly busy. So I work to short deadlines and it's almost triage. So if I know that something is due to be done this week, then it will happen this week, and something else will be put on the long fingers. So we'd encourage people to think about what they might be able to present.
Another great incentive to present to the conference is you get a discount on your conference registration fees. So hopefully that will encourage more people to present.
It is a good reason to present. You get to have your 5 minutes of fame or 30 minutes of fame, whichever you choose to do, and you get to see other people's thing at a reduced rate. Maybe we need a whole category for that, Joe. What if I present? Can I get a discount?
There's also some great free conference workshops as well. So if you have a look at the program, you can have a look at the details of some of those workshops are up there and some school visits. So it's not just about the actual conference, it's an opportunity to come up a little bit early beforehand and enjoy some of those pre-conference workshops and also the school visits. So we've got some lovely maker spaces on display and some wearable technology hands-on sessions. So there's lots of exciting pre-conference workshops that have already been put on the program.
There's also a review breakfast with the presenters. Now, is that for just the keynotes, or are all of the presenters invited to that?
I think that'll be the heavies.
Yes. Yeah.
And
the conference dinner, that's another space to get up close and personal with the like all of the keynotes if you wanted to have any further conversation or just get to meet your friends for that little bit longer as well in the relaxed atmosphere.
And I think that's one of the opportunities, with conferences. I mean, they're really, in this day and age, because we can do this sort of stuff, there's no reason to go to a conference except to actually meet people. And that from an introvert. But the reason I go to conferences is because I get to meet people and create the networks that allow me then to come back with a question sometime down the track. So getting to the conference, getting to see what a whole bunch of people are doing, getting a little snippet of that, opportunity to talk to them perhaps in a break or over a drink later in the afternoon or the evening, and then to follow up later on down the track is really the reason to be there.
At the last QSite conference, Roland and I had the pleasure of, and for some of the DLTV ones as well, I must say, so at DigiCon, we actually had the pleasure of having a little hangout session with each of the keynotes, almost all of the keynotes, after they did their keynote sessions, and it was really wonderful to have that extra conversation. Granted, they were under the pressure of being live streamed on the internet, saved on YouTube forever, just like tonight, I think. But it was really wonderful just to have that extended opportunity, and we invited a few more people to come and join us as well. So if you are really inspired by a keynote, I'm hoping we'll get the chance to have a similar kind of arrangement. I think that we talked about that previously, but that was probably like, I don't know, last week. And it's so long ago. I've eaten too much chocolate since then. But yeah, we'll also be keen for people to join us in those hangouts and extra conversations too. So it's not just that one-off opportunity to see someone talk.
I think Amanda raises something that's really important, because I know a lot of teachers are now taking some of the content that they're doing and flipping it on the outside, giving students a chance to engage with it after the class and maybe in their own time. And in some ways, that's kind of what I noticed we've been doing with these conferences. Some of the content that we have, you can engage with online. You can go back and, as Amanda was saying, we could have an opportunity to catch up with a keynote for a few minutes and listen to a summation, or be able to post some questions. We also know there's a really dynamic online presence. What started off at the Canberra conference with just a few dozen tweets exploded in Melbourne to about 4,000, and I'm sure there's going to be even more in Brisbane across so many different social media. And that tapestry becomes a narrative that runs across all these different media and all the different issues. And I'm excited, Peter, with the idea that at Brisbane I can get together with people. I don't have to grab all of the websites and the details. I can engage in a face-to-face narrative that might catalyse and change me. If that can happen, and hopefully I can become a better educator from it.
Yeah, and I think that's really, I guess, is the reason to be at a physical conference, is that opportunity to meet people, and it's the happenstance of just at morning tea time or lunch or some other times through the day, just bumping into people who are genuinely interesting people, and picking up little bits and pieces of information, but often it's then the connection that you've made allows you to get back to that person later on down the track, maybe visit what they're doing or find out more about what they're doing and apply it back in your own place.
What would your advice be for someone who's never been to a national conference before? Do they have to present a paper? Do they have to go to all of the sessions? How do you kind of take that journey?
That depends on what sort of person you are. I mean, there are some people who go to conference and will attend the conferences that they select, but yeah, they'll also take an opportunity to see the city. So if you can find a day during the conference where there's not much happening, or either side of the conference is probably better because there's always something happening at the conference, then the opportunity to get out and explore new places, and maybe do that with new friends is always worth doing. So I think you don't have to present something. I think what you've got to do is to go with the desire to see what you can find out. It's really asking yourself the question, if I go, what will I learn? Or what might I learn? Or if I go, what questions do I have that I want answered? And start to look for those.
I've enjoyed attending conferences in the past, but sometimes I have to explain to the school administration what's in it for the school. So what sort of benefits would a teacher who's been to a conference like ACCE 2016 bring back to a school?
It varies, but I mean, there's a number of different benefits that people will come back with. In some cases, it will be that they bring back some good ideas. So they may have seen something which is going on somewhere else that they can take and apply immediately in their own classroom or across the school. It may be that they make connections that they can follow up on later when they're looking for support and assistance. But probably the biggest benefit is that most people come back from conferences after they get over the jet lag, if they have that, much more energised. Yeah, there's a certain vibe and some excitement. People did tend to come back refreshed and energised. You're excited about the possibilities and maybe how they can make a difference and get stuck in that way. So, yeah, the benefit to the school or the other organisation typically is that people come back revved up and ready to get on with doing something that's perhaps a little different.
I think it also gives you a national perspective. When I went to the Adelaide conference, I really enjoyed the BYOD forum. And I took lots of notes and shared them all with my colleagues, and had really interesting BYOD discussions when I came back. So I think the advantage of it being a national conference is it's not just other people in your state that you're networking with, but it's people from all over Australia and sometimes from people internationally as well. So I think it certainly changes your view from just being a school-focused view to being a national focus, and you can bring in a lot of other ideas into those discussions that really shape where your school's going.
Yep, and that can work in both directions. I suppose you can go along and discover that, hey, there's somebody down the road or across the country who's doing something that's really interesting, and it's an idea that we could pick up and use. Or, gee, you know what? We're doing some stuff that's actually not too bad. We're actually ahead of the game.
It's good to get that information.
Another thing I really like about the ACCE conferences is that link between universities and schools as well. So you've got that link between the researchers and academics and the practitioners as well. And that can lead to some really interesting conversations and future partnerships. And sometimes people get inspired to write their own research papers or attempt a doctorate and that kind of stuff too. So it's really kind of fascinating how you can build more of that research culture in your school by being inspired by a paper or a collection of academics that you've heard discuss something, and you think, well, hang on, what if they came to my school and saw what was happening here, or what if they worked with us on XYZ? It's really interesting what can come out of these types of adventures.
That works in the other direction too, because we sometimes go along and say, ooh, they're doing that in the schools, we're going to have to lift our game.
Now, if you were a pre-service teacher, perhaps one that's in Brisbane, is this something that you should be attending as a matter of course for getting up to speed with the current developments in education technology or perhaps in learning pedagogies?
I think there'd certainly be some benefit for pre-service. In fact, as I was sitting here now, I'm thinking, maybe I should really rev up my class and encourage some of them to go. It's a long time since I've done quite that sort of thing, but some years ago I actually did a paper at a QSite conference with a group of students out of one of my classes. and that's not beyond the realms of possibility. Maybe I could get a group of my students to come along and do a presentation.
I attended my first conference as a pre-service teacher, and I found it invaluable. We've already received some student registrations for the conference, so if you are a pre-service teacher and you want to come along, then there'll be other people to keep you company. So yes, I think definitely if you're a pre-service teacher, there'll definitely be something for you. It's a really great way to get ideas for your new career.
Well, and you might even meet someone who's got a job going.
Absolutely.
Well, you might be inspired to do something absolutely amazing that makes you stick out from the crowd when you're applying for a job.
Now, I was going to save this question for a future Hangout, but I might ask it here because I've got the gang. Okay, I'm getting revved up for my first conference. I'm all excited. What do I do in the days and weeks leading up to it? What sort of exercises would be useful?
Oh, get on Twitter. Follow the hashtags. See if you can participate in any of the pre-conference conversations as well. And sometimes they post the papers early, so read them. They're always awesome.
Yeah, always certainly check out the program and see what you might want to go and see, because once you get to the conference, if you're like me, you'll probably find yourself too busy to go through the program in any detail and work out what you really want to see. So if the program's out ahead of time, that's a good thing to do, spend some time looking at that. And I guess look for who else is going to be there and people that you might want to try and meet, so that you've got a few names ready to target.
Oh, but Peter, I've looked at that program and I know all the conference programs. There's too many good things to do. Now, how do I just navigate through that maze?
Bring a friend and have them do the other session so you can share afterwards.
Good idea.
I was going to say, make sure you're following the QSite Facebook page, the QSite Twitter feed, the ACCE 2016 hashtag. There's a number of different social media platforms that we're using. LinkedIn is another one that will be promoted on shortly. So we're trying to cross the gamut of different platforms.
And sometimes I've had fun too. Just picking a session at random and going along to it just to see if I might learn something. You don't always have to go to ones with your friends. They'll always be friends to you if you don't turn up to their session. They might not forgive you if no one turned up. I do think that there's a place for being able to work. When I was in America, in San Antonio, it was the first time I met Julie Lindsay, just sitting in a session. I think I forgot to change rooms, and she had this wonderful talk about global learning communities. I probably wouldn't have thought of sitting further hearing what she had to say, but it wasn't something I would have naturally picked out. She put a whole different spin into it. It's sometimes hard to read that into the abstracts, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit Forrest Gump, isn't it? Life is a bit like a box of chocolates. You never quite know what you're going to get when you go to a conference presentation. So yeah, and I think that's it, is to accept that it is a bit of luck of the draw. You're sometimes going to get some surprises that are much more interesting than what you might have thought. Sometimes things will disappoint you perhaps, but you'll still mostly pick up a wrinkle here and there and get some sort of a snippet that's useful. And yeah, often it's best not to follow your friends around, because if your friends go to different sessions and you're talking to them later, you'll pick up on the things you missed.
Now, I had a really crazy idea. I was thinking of actually running a workshop on knitting as a form of coding, and having a bit of a knitting circle, rather like Google Circle. Do you think there's some scope for me to be able to put in a refereed paper on that?
I would think so, yes. You could certainly look at that as a variant of code, and perhaps you could get into Jacquard Loom at the same time. Yeah, punch cards and all that good stuff.
Oh, there we go, Amanda. I could bring in my wearable technology and do a bit of weaving.
Can I bring in my daughter with some glitter?
Well, actually, particularly if you got hold of an old knitting machine that really, in a sense, had to be programmed, didn't it?
Oh my goodness, there's some amazing knitting machines. Sorry, I've been spending far too much time looking at craft videos on YouTube. I am making a jumper as well as a quilt. I sound like an old lady today.
It's funny you mention that, Amanda, because we've been talking off air about the idea that STEM by mashing in the art, turns it into STEAM. And we're not just simply adding letters into the alphabet to diz it up a bit or bling STEM. It's more about realising that if STEM's done well, it's going to encroach on ways that digitally, I'm missing my art language here. Come on, Fiona, give me a hand. What am I trying to do?
You're going to be doing some design.
Yeah, in a sense, but in a way that makes it aesthetically pleasing and says something about the life and the world that we live in. Now, do you reckon that there are some elements like that? Because I guess technology being a part of the STEM curriculum, that you'll contribute to the way that we're promoting STEM in schools?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, and it is certainly tied to the STEM notion. I don't think you can avoid. I mean, the technology in STEM is a little bit hard to pin down at times. Because we tend to think about it sometimes in terms of the broader view of technology we've got in the Australian curriculum, but then again, if that's technology, what's engineering about? So STEM can be a little bit deceptive in terms of just what's caught up in that complex of bits and pieces.
It's coding plus the other stuff.
That's right. We should make technology as the glue that holds it all together, especially digital technology.
Yeah. Well,
and instead of STEAM, you can call it teams.
Well, and it's more so the computational thinking, I think, rather even than necessarily the coding. I mean,
absolutely,
it's how you get that, take the problem apart and put it back together in little bits and pieces, and the actual code or the language that you express it in. Maybe a little bit of translation to be done at some point, but it's how you think through.
Definitely.
What if we could create interactive art that followed us around the room? So all these fantastic drawings in the great galleries of the world where there's special artistic techniques where it looks like the person's looking at you. What if it was an interactive art piece that followed you around the art gallery? So
like
there's
my sister was a bit like that. I used to paint on her, and then she'd follow me all around the house.
Yeah, and yes, I think interactive art is certainly a possibility. But
that's an interesting idea, because we played to that theme, didn't we, Amanda, at Adelaide, where we did the flash mob lip sync video. I think it was a challenge that we picked up from the keynote. You said, try and pull this one off, and we did.
Yeah. It's a bit outside of my comfort zone, but we did it anyway, and that's really cool.
It was awesome. I'll have to do better with the camera technique. I kept cutting your head off. But
next time, easier to sing. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm no Elsa, but that's all right.
You did well. We're just missing your tower of ice. Do you reckon we could do that again?
Oh, I think we could.
A flash mob?
I don't think we had the right viral mix for world fame. Making a song rewritten about pedagogy and online connectivity probably wasn't a wide target audience, but they're the ones that matter. Hey, yeah, I think we need to recruit more friends this time, maybe like a whole band.
Get the band back together again. I know I play the clarinet. Peter, I heard that you play an instrument.
No.
We hear that we can make you play an instrument.
I wish that I could, but yes, you'd have to program me.
He's got a good baritone voice. What about Kylie? You play an instrument?
Oh, I don't. Unless you gave me a banana piano with the Arduinos, we could do that.
Okay, we can do that.
You play the banana. Good. Okay. And what about Fiona?
Oh, I'm a recorder and flute girl. A lot of hot air.
Well, we've got a banana, recorder and flute, a baritone singer. There's me. And Amanda, you can play? Keyboard, was it?
Yeah, keyboard, etc. I can play a few things, but it's not about me. It's about the team.
Yeah, that's right. There was that little keyboard that Sophie was using with the 5 or 6 keys. I saw that. But I think that together we could make music, and I think that's probably something that we can think about for this conference, that by all these different people coming together, you could make the music in the curriculum and open up our minds to new possibilities. What if?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said.
Now that sounds like the perfect closing statement, but is there anything else anyone would like to add as we begin to wrap up our Hangout? We're not very good at sticking to time because we get so involved with our fun conversations. So any closing thoughts that you want to share?
No, just don't. I mean, I guess the thing to ask yourself is, what if I did think about doing a presentation, and what would I get out of that? And there are benefits to be gotten there in terms of things you might learn, connections you might make, and it's not too late to get that presentation in.
Yay, absolutely.
My thought is, what if you get involved in the social networking side of it? Look for those that hashtag ACC. Now here we go. It's a hashtag ACCE 2016.
The double C, you get used to it after a few years of practice.
And Kylie?
What if you came to you're just in a presentation, but in the networking sessions over a cup of tea in between conference sessions? So what if you brought a friend, and what if you made a friend when you were there?
That's a good one. I like that.
Mine's going to be, because we've... Yeah, sorry, you go first.
No, go. Sorry.
No, mine was just going to be, what if you took a risk and did something outside of your comfort zone?
Good one.
And mine is, what if you all come back again next time and we have another Hangout and we talk a bit more about the conference and unpack some of the other wonderful things that are happening with the guest speakers.
Wonderful.
So I really enjoyed it tonight.
Yep.
In about 2 weeks or so, I think we're trying to recruit a keynote to converse with us. And if you'd love to join us on the panel, or you'd like to be invited to come along, you can join our ACCELN Google Plus community, or you can like ACCE 2016 on Facebook. You can follow all our ACCELN tweets. There's quite a mouthful of things there. And if you have any other suggestions for our future shows, please let us know, and we're hoping you will submit an idea, a presentation for the conference in September.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody, and I shall look forward to seeing you all next time.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.